October the 7th changed Israel, I think probably forever.
Yeah, it did. October 7th changed Israel. I think it changed the world as well. I think it was sort of like a demarcation. I think you can almost measure current events before and after October 7th. It has profoundly, as we all know, affected Israel. As you were saying, what Samuel Smodger is doing and what this new outreach to help many, tens of thousands of Israelis have left the south and have left the north, displaced internally. If you go up to the northern border now, you can't get to about 4 or 5 miles away because it's a military zone, because of threats of Hezbollah and a possibility of a major war breaking out there, even after the war in Hamas, with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Everybody knows somebody that may have been murdered, kidnapped on October 7th. Israel is much, in many ways, like a family, and they internalize emotionally what happens to people in the IDF, people that are kidnapped. If you can't go many places in Israel right now without seeing a banner of the hostages and their pictures and their names, and so many 300,000 reservists, and that means the people out of work, as you mentioned, and it's such a difficult time for Israelis, and not only Israelis, but the Jewish people around the world. Anti-Semitism has exploded exponentially in the real world and online. We did an interview with a lady the other day that said anti-Semitism was up like 29,000% online and the social media, which is having a huge impact on the world, but especially the young people with social media platforms like TikTok. So it has changed Israel and it's changed the Middle East. It's changed history.
It has, but I believe God's going to bring it to something good. We'll have to wait and see the end of that. But, Chris has a gentle spirit, and you feel that, I think, when you listen to him speak. What you may not know is he's one of the most courageous people I've ever met. Now, he served in Jerusalem, but really he reports from all over the Middle East. And I've watched him for many years now. When there is a problem someplace, you'll find Chris standing in the middle of it with a camera. And if you don't know, he doesn't blend in really well all over the Middle East. I mean, he was in Cairo in the midst of the riots. He was in Turkey after the earthquakes and all the devastation. And so I'm not surprised now you've been down in Gaza and in the kibbutzim there along the border.
Yeah. I have been in difficult places, and yet in the midst of that, God has protected us and kept us safe. We came there in August of 2000 with my wife, Liz, and our 3 children, Philip, Kathleen, and Grace. 5 weeks later, the Second Intifada began, and I know you know that so well as Betty and George. And yet God protected us, and really we felt like it was living out Psalm 91, that he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. And he protected us during that season. And he's protected us, thankfully, in Tahrir Square in Cairo, and also, during this war with Hamas. And one of the things, and as you mentioned, we were there in Gaza. We had about 3 weeks ago, we had the opportunity to go with the IDF into a place called Khan Yunis. You may have heard of that already. It's one of the major cities in the Gaza Strip where there's been a lot of fighting going on. And the IDF invited myself as well as Joel Rosenberg and a cameraman to go in with the IDF and actually see firsthand one of these terror tunnels. And we got to walk in them. And as you'll see, we're going to show a story about that. You see what Hamas has been doing for 18 years and where the billions of aid money came in, where it went. It went a lot underground, and to see these terror tunnels. So I think the first story we're going to see is from a place called Khan Yunis, and we're going to go deep into a Hamas terror tunnel.
What we see in front of you over here is one of many tunnels that are underground in each and every one of these neighborhoods.
Deep in Khan Yunis, currently ground zero of the fight in Gaza, IDF Brigadier General Dan Beauforts talked about the extent of the tunnel system and how the IDF found tunnel shafts everywhere.
There's a shaft in every place you can find. There's a shaft in the kindergarten, there's a shaft in the school, there's a shaft in the mosques, There's a shaft in the supermarket, wherever you go, there's a shaft going down into the underground tunnels and underground world of this unhuman entity of Hamas.
Goldfuss also pointed out how this underground network played into the October 7th strategy and aftermath.
They entered Israel, attacked the villagers, raped, burned, murdered, slaughtered civilians. Some of them were taken in as trophies, just as trophies taken in these tunnels, into this tunnel, and such as. They took time, money, and effort building the underground terror tunnels. Let's go.
So I'm headed right back into one of the tunnel shafts here in conduits. And you can see in just a second. Something when you see it on film, when you see it to yourself, it's a whole new world. You can see to yourself, this is what Hamas has been doing for 18 years, building these tunnels, hundreds of miles of tunnels. We start with a section used by Hamas guards, and Goldfuss explains how this unique battleground creates an historic challenge for IDF soldiers.
So what we're doing here in 10 minutes is for the first time in your military history, we're actually maneuvering over and underground simultaneously. So it took us time to evolve, to learn, to understand how to do that, but that's what we're doing today.
As we moved deeper, the heat and humidity became much more intense. Then came the surprise at the next section.
I have a small request, and that is switch off all the lights. Currently is the feeding of a 1-year-old baby in this town. Feeding and kidnapped people brought in here and taken in these towns. No electronics, no connection to the outside world. Just darkness and darkness and darkness from all points of view.
With lights back on, Goldfuss showed us the room.
Look at the cars, electricity, time, effort, money that is put into buildings. We're now at the moment approximately 15 meters underground. We're going deeper.
We're in what the general calls a strategic tunnel, not a tactical tunnel where fighters can go from place to place, but a tunnel used by Hamas leaders, and also a place where they know that at least 3 of the hostages were kept. Our next stop revealed a much different room, furnished and equipped for both guards and Hamas leaders.
This is years of planning. If anybody has a question, how long will I think? The 7th of October was planned for many years. They planned how to attack women and children in the villages.
This here is what we call the video and I see leaders, but after the war began, they built this cage, and they believe that at least 12 hostages were held here, 3 who have been released.
If anyone in the world needs evidence for the horrific actions that the terror entity Hamas has done, you're in it. You're in this evidence. From this place right here, at least 3 hostages were released.
They included Sapir Cohen, Saha Calderon, and Oy Yaakov. The tunnel holding these hostages goes on for more than half a mile. As you can see in this tunnel, some of the places, it goes off to another direction. So you can see that this would be like a spider's web, all the way through Congress and many of the places of the Gaza Strip. Given the size and setup, General Goldfuss believes Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar stayed in this tunnel and vows to track him down.
He doesn't care about his people. He's putting his people between him and us. He's putting the civilians, the population between him and us. He's running. He's on his own line. What will he change?
Above ground, millions worldwide accuse Israel's military offensive of genocide. After an extensive study, John Spencer of West Point's Modern War Institute countered that claim, writing, "Despite the unique challenges Israel faces in its war against Hamas, it has implemented more measures to prevent civilian casualties than any other military in history."
When I am going to NATO, pull the civilians out of NATO to prevent myself to either injury or hurt anybody who's not involved. I take utmost Time and effort to do so. When the is amazing, the underground communities, you can see the different munitions encountered in these underground tunnels. You can see grenades.
After displaying certain munitions found in the tunnel, Goldfuss expressed his amazement at the overall amount.
The amount of weapons you find in every house. Every house, every building you move into, you find amounts of weapons. You wouldn't find in a kindergarten, you wouldn't find weapons. So you go to a kindergarten, you find dozens of RPG. And then you go into a school, you go into a union school, and you find dozens of mortars and IEDs. And it's just everywhere. You want to go into a mosque, and you want to say, hey, the mosque is out of there. But it's not. There's shots from the mosque down underground, and in the mosque, you find mortars, RPGs, IEDs. You said it's just in every corner.
It's really been an extraordinary experience to see firsthand, to witness the heat, the humidity, the extent of these tunnels that run for miles of the countries and hundreds of miles through all of the Gaza Strip. After nearly 2 hours, we returned toward the light, struck by the realization that many hostages held for more than 100 days likely remain in tunnels like this one. Goldfuss ended his briefing with a message to the world.
We're fighting a just war. On the 7th of October, we were attacked in a savage attack. This is a just war, and we will win this war. With patience and with stubbornness from every leader, overground and underground. And my message to the world is patience. But the fighting here is not only between Israel and Gaza. This is a fight between the free world, a world that believes in freedom, in human rights, in humanity, in life, to terrorists who believe in death.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Khan Yunis, Gaza.
From that story, you can see, first of all, tunnels everywhere throughout Gaza, weapons everywhere, almost in every house, school, mosques, and historic kind of fighting, fighting above ground. Urban warfare is probably, I'm sure the military people here know, is one of the hardest forms of fighting, but it's not only urban warfare, but under the ground, which is something few militaries, if any, have ever faced in military history. And also, as I said, I was there with Joel Rosenberg, and down there near where the cage was, we took time to pray for the release of the hostages and for the comfort for the family members that their hostages or their family loved ones are still there. And afterwards, we also took communion outside that we could pray and ask God to redeem that land that has been defiled. And I also had an opportunity to quickly pray for that general who I compared to sort of like a modern day Joshua. The reason we do that, or I've done that over time, over different places, is because as with the unique opportunity as a journalist, you can be there. And back in the 1040 window project, many people may remember that, there was a phrase, praying on site with insight. And so it's just a privilege to be able to represent part of the body of Christ, to be there and pray for what was had to been defiled.
I think as you see some of these videos, it's shocking and uncomfortable. It's important to remember that a significant portion of the people around us don't believe that this happened. I shared with some of you when I was in Washington, D.C. a couple of weeks ago at the Israeli embassy on the way home at the airport. A man asked me why I was there, and I told him in a sentence, and he said, "Oh, I don't think that really happened." And that's a pretty common idea amongst those around us, either because they are willfully ignorant or just woefully underinformed. And so your voice matters. The other thing that the videos show you is this wasn't a few drunken teenagers in the back of pickup trucks misbehaving on a Saturday night. There were hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars invested in these tunnels. It's been years and years, well over a decade in the planning. This was a very well orchestrated, intentional attack, and it's fundamentally an expression of evil. When I say to you that the solutions to the problems we face aren't political, outcomes may be resolved in political arenas, but the battle fundamentally is spiritual. The hatred expressed towards the Jewish people lives just as fervently towards you because the incubator for that is something spiritual. So your prayers, your willingness to tell the truth and to stand for right and wrong is an important way of defending your friends in Israel.
Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel. You know the drill. Hit the bell for notifications. If you want to, leave a comment.